Then there is the evidential interpretation, the degree to which you believe the information presented warrants the conclusion. Think of a court of law, where in judging the probability that the defendant is guilty, you ignore inadmissible and prejudicial background information and consider only the strength of the prosecutor's case. Who can do that? It was the evidential interpretation that made it rational to judge that Linda, having been presented as a social justice warrior, was likelier to be a feminist bank teller than a bank teller. I think I might just be too tired. The degree to which you believe the information presented warrants the conclusion. It was the evidential interpretation that made it rational to judge that Linda, having been presented as a social justice warrior, was likelier to be a feminist bank teller than a bank teller. I mean, look at you, how you're using the word rational here. So I guess you would say it's not logical or justified or sound, but it's rational because what do you mean rational? What do you mean rational? And then also, I don't understand what makes it rational. All right, made it rational. It's the evidential interpretation that made it rational to judge that Linda, to judge this silly thing. Now, what is that? Isn't that the representative heuristic, right? Okay. Why do we use similarity to gauge statistical probability? This is on the Decision Lab website. Put a link in the bio, if I remember. What is the representativeness heuristic? Jesus Christ, is a mental shortcut that we use when estimating probabilities. Right, it's a mental shortcut we use when estimating probabilities. When we're trying to assess how likely a certain event is, we often make our decision by assessing how similar it is to an existing mental prototype. Where this bias occurs. Let's say you're going to a concert with your friend Sarah. She also invited her two friends, John and Adam, whom you've never met before. You know that one is a mathematician while the other is a musician. When you finally meet Sarah's friends, you notice that John wears glasses and is a bit shy. Blah, blah, blah. You can see where this is going. You later discover you were mistaken. All right. All right, what the representativeness. Linda. Right, the conjunction fallacy. They use a heuristic. So I'm on the Wikipedia now for the conjunction fallacy. Now I just need to find the word heuristic. Tversky and Kahneman argue that most people get this problem wrong because they use a heuristic, an easily calculated procedure called representativeness to make this kind of judgment. Option 2 seems more representative of Linda from the description of her, even though it is clearly mathematically less likely. How do you go from it's almost like Pinker has the best understanding of the mind. You know who he reminds me of? Francis, or something Francis. What was his name? Francis Watson? No, he's an English theologian and Testament scholar. No, what's the DNA guy? No, stop. Not Francis Crick. Collins. Yes, Collins also has written books on science, medicine, and religion, including the New York Times bestseller, The Language of God, A Scientist Presents Evidence for Belief. That's who you remind me of. You like get a bunch of stuff, except I don't know. No, I'm being silly. All right. All right. I think we gotta stop. We're gonna read this last one because there's the word finally. Finally, there's the frequentist interpretation. If you did toss the die many times, say 1,000, and counted the outcomes, you'd find that the result was even in around 500 of the tosses, or half of them. What is the difference between frequentist and classical? Oh my god, I don't understand. Alright, so 1 was classical, 2 was propensity, 3 was subjectivist, 4 was evidential. For what? I don't know. And the 5th italicized word is frequentist. I think we're tired. Alright, let's read up to the Dilbert cartoon here. Okay. Ordinarily, the 5 interpretations are aligned. In the case of a coin toss, the penny is symmetrical. Coming up heads comprises exactly 1 out of the 2 possible outcomes. Your gut feeling is halfway between heads for sure and tails for sure. The argument for heads is as strong as the argument for tails, and in the long run, half of the tosses you'll see are heads. Alright, so in the case of the penny is symmetrical. What's that? What, you're skipping in number 2? That's propensity? And then okay, so number 2, then you got number 1. Coming up heads comprises exactly 1 out of the 2 possible outcomes. So that's the classical definition, and now I see how that's different from the frequentist one. And then we've got the subjectivist. So your credence estimation. All right. Then you've got the evidential interpretation. So what? Yeah, I got you now. Okay. So the evidential interpretation, it's like saying what, but I don't know. I know it would be a lot easier if I phrased it in psychology. So with it theories, so like the evidential interpretation. The degree to which you believe the information presented warrants a conclusion. Basically, the evidential interpretation is just how much it sings, bro. And how easily you can age. Or how... Yeah, okay. So just how much it sings, like... Or no, it's not just how much it sings. It's like, can you give... It doesn't have to be actually a real reason or a good reason, but, like, can you cite something? Even if it's... Okay. The representativeness heuristic? Alright. And then the argument for heads is... Alright, let's go. What was that last one? 2 minutes and 21 seconds. Let's just try to get to the Dilbert cartoon. Okay. The probability of heads is 0.5 in every case. But the interpretations don't mean the same thing, and sometimes they part company. When they do, statements about probability can result in confusion, controversy, even tragedy. Most dramatically, the first 4 interpretations apply to the vaguely mystical notion of the probability of a single instance. What is the probability that you are over 50? That the next pope will be Bono? That Britney Spears and Katy Perry are the same person? That there is a life on Enceladus, one of the moons of Saturn? You might object that the questions are meaningless. Either you are over 50 or you aren't. And probability has nothing to do with it. But in the subjectivist interpretation, I can put a number on my ignorance. This offends some statisticians who want to reserve the concept of probability for relative frequency in a set of events, which are really real and can be counted. One quipped that single event probabilities belong not in mathematics, but in psychoanalysis. Seems fair enough. But also worthwhile, you know, talking about probability from the, all right. Lay people, too, can have trouble wrapping their minds around the concept of the numerical probability of a single event. They are mad at the weatherman after getting soaked on a day when she had predicted a 10% chance of rain. And they laugh at the poll aggregator who predicted that Hillary Clinton had a 60% chance of winning the 2016 presidential election. These soothsayers defend themselves by invoking a frequentist interpretation of their probabilities. On 1 out of 10 days in which she makes such a prediction, it rains. In 6 out of 10 elections with those polling numbers, the leading candidate wins. In this strip, Dilbert's boss illustrates a common fallacy. I estimate the odds at a 70% chance things go well, and a 30% chance we lose money on the deal. If we lose money, will you admit you were wrong? How could I be wrong? I'm just telling you the odds. If we lose money, that's on you for recommending it. No. I'm telling you the odds and letting you decide. Well, you're the one saying this is such a great deal. I'm only telling you the odds, you pea-brained ignoramus. So you won't admit you were wrong. I was so focused on the accents I did not read any of that. But so I'm gonna just do that on my own time. But I am just gonna add just a little interesting thing, I think. It's really funny, I think, the way that we sometimes use the word probability, or probably. And look out for this, and you'll notice it. When we don't know something, the first answer or possibility that comes to mind, we present it as probably true. One reason for that is that, we assume that any information or ideas we have are the full set of possibilities. So, for instance, let's say you walk up to a building, you don't know where the entrance is. And then and it's like a bunch of windows and doors. You can't tell what's a window, what's a door, blah, blah, I don't know. And then you see the first door that you see, you're going to go, that is probably the entrance, which doesn't really seem like a particularly egregious. But it might not. All right. Well, all right. All right. Maybe it is probably the entrance. But is it? Because the building I'm imagining is like really big, and I feel like what inspired this observation was people going, "Oh, that's probably the entrance," and then someone else goes, "Oh yeah, there it is. You found it." And then there's just so much confidence as everyone goes over there. And maybe in one case in which I wasn't convinced, I'm still maybe looking around. Anyway, so I just think that's interesting how quickly we go to probably when actually it's just the only possibility that's come to mind so far. I think that's a worthwhile distinction.